President, I deliver this speech as the Conference of Parties are discussing right now in Lima, Peru, on the future, not only of this nation, of our region, but of our planet. I deliver this speech, Mr. President, as a super typhoon, possibly as strong as Haiyan, will strike our country into our shores in the next few days. I deliver this speech, Mr. President, as agencies have measured the clean air in Metro Manila is not as clean as we expect it to be. In fact, it has been noted that it is the dirtiest this time as compared to other years. I rise therefore on a matter of personal and collective privilege to fight complacency and ignite action against a crisis that affects each and every person on this earth. I show you, Mr. President, this map of sea surface present there now. Sea surface temperatures from the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration of the U.S. or the NOAA. If you see, Mr. President, the reddest parts of the oceans are the hottest parts of the sea surface. Note what country lies in the middle. If you look, yes, that is the Philippines, our beloved Philippines. Ano ba ho ang ibig sabihin nito? What does it mean? Tatlo po ang bagay na ibig sabihin. Basic atmospheric science tells us that hot water is a fuel of typhoons. Last year, we were hit by the strongest typhoon in history to make landfall. Second, where there is hot water, there is faster evaporation, greater condensation, greater precipitation, or rain. Lalo pong lumalakas ang ulan. We've experienced and will continue to experience intense rainfall more frequent and its consequential flooding. Pangatlo po, heat expands matter, meaning seawater is expanding around the Philippines, causing a rise in sea level. This is just one of the impacts of the unraveling climate crisis. In fact, we should no longer call it climate change. That is a term of the 80s. Rather, we should begin calling it the climate crisis. Yet despite the ongoing crisis, Mr. President, the world is in a state of paralysis, doing the same thing over and over in the prevailing business-as-usual complacency. The political branches of almost all governments in the world are stuck in the mindset of economic development at all costs, even at the cost of the very sources of life: our land, our air, our water, our mountains, our life. The climate change negotiations under the umbrella of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change are at a standstill, a case of paralysis by analysis. It is in this light that a team of some of the world's top international environmental lawyers, backed up by the best team of scientists, is initiating an unprecedented legal action before the International Court of Justice. I join them in this move, Mr. President. It seeks to hold to account all states and their government duty-bound to take serious and sustained action to address and face the climate crisis. Thus, Mr. President, we have filed Senate Resolution number 1030, 1030, calling on the President of the Republic of the Philippines and the Secretary of Foreign Affairs to take the lead in passing a resolution in the 70th session of the United Nations General Assembly in 2015, urging the International Court of Justice for an advisory opinion on the question: under international law, what are the legal duties of states to protect humankind of the present and future generations from the climate crisis? Let me repeat. Under international law, What are the legal duties of states to protect humankind of the present and the future generations from the climate crisis? Under this legal procedure, Mr. President, all governments of the world will be asked to submit their comment, and this exercise will force them to seriously think about the climate crisis. This move will also compel governments to take action to enable the human species to address or face the ever-worsening impact of the climate crisis. This movement is very creative. It is not just about fighting a case in the ICJ or a piece of paper called a judicial decision. What makes this movement unique, unprecedented, is that it requires every person who seeks to join to effect changes in his own lifestyle in order to reduce their carbon footprint and their impact on our natural resources. The idea here, Mr. President, is to have everyone working together. If we call on our government to set targets to reduce climate-disrupting gases, we must also set our own targets in reducing our personal carbon footprint. If we want to trigger action, change must come from within us first. Only then will members of our movement, mainly children and the young, but with the old alike, all over the world, be empowered to petition their governments and their UN ambassadors to support this initiative in the UN General Assembly and in the International Court of Justice. Mr. President, this is a global mobilization of unprecedented proportions by the youth of this earth who have the most at stake in what we do or what we fail to do today. In Chinese, Mr. President, the character for crisis is made up of two characters, danger and opportunity. We all know the dangers, but what is opportunity? The opportunity may be found in a line once uttered by one of the great geniuses of the 20th century. We cannot solve a problem using the same mindset that created the problem in the first place. If burning of oil and coal is the main cause of the problem, the solution is quite simple. Cut it down as much as possible. And therefore, there lies the opportunity, Mr. President. The mindset of motor vehicles, cars, more cars, is also the catalyst for the array of problems that we see today. Among them, severe traffic congestion, which all of us, especially the commuters, especially those who ride in public vehicles, especially those who work in offices like ours, we see them every day. The poisoning of the very air we breathe, which brings about pulmonary upper respiratory illness, intense flooding, which all of us, rich or poor middle class, not exempted, all experience, social alienation, the high cost of transport, extreme urban poverty, and acute psychological stress, among others. How do we solve the problem of traffic? The solution does not seem to be the widening of roads, because we've done that, or the construction of more flyovers, because we've done that, because over time, new roads would just be filled with new cars. The solution is simple actually, but brilliant. A road diet. We need to constrict our roads so that we will be forced to use public space more efficiently. Consider these facts. A person standing up occupies only 1/8 of a square meter. Sitting down, he occupies 1/4 of a square meter. Whereas only 2% of our people own motor vehicles, all of the roads are given to motor vehicles. The 98 million Filipinos who do not have motor vehicles do not even have a place to walk, to bike, or the option of good public transport. Mr. President, this is injustice of the highest order. In constitutional law, this is a violation of the guarantee to equal protection of the laws. I wish to cite a related initiative, the Bayanihan sa Daan, launched last week in Malacanang, which maintains that our roads should be shared among pedestrians, cyclists, motorists. It promotes a paradigm shift from the motor vehicle-based transport system to a multimodal system where people are not dependent on their own motorized vehicles every time they go. Instead, they can choose different modes of transport depending on their needs, walking or biking for short distances, and safe, reliable, inexpensive, and convenient public transport for long-distance trips. A legal petition has been filed in the Supreme Court of the Philippines to divide the roads by half. Half for motor vehicles, mainly for good public transport, and half for cyclists and people. And by the way, Mr. President, this is already a law under Section 9, Executive Order 774, and Admin Order 254 of 2009. And I actually thought this was impossible before and was quite skeptical. However, for those who think it is impossible, let it be said here and now that this initiative has in fact already been done in the city of Iloilo. Along the diversion road of Iloilo, more than one-half of the roads are devoted to pedestrian walkways and beautiful bike lanes. This is a product of the vision and the work of one man who is here today, our distinguished Senate President. He has cleaned the river, he has shared the road, he has done bike lanes, and gave pedestrians and commuters their share of the space. Mr. President, this idea may be radical. No, it is actually revolutionary. And what you've done is extremely laudable, which should be done in other cities of the country. But then, Mr. President, local government officials working with their people are already showing how this can be done, as you've done in Iloilo City. Vegan 2 has a totally pedestrianized street in Calle Rizal. Marikina is the first city to build bike lanes as a permanent fixture of its roads. Pasig already has a 4 carless roads and is the first to experiment the innovative Filipino-style bicycle rapid transport and road sharing of the East Bank Road. Cebu has started the Green Loop experiment. In fact, more than 10 years ago, Puerto Princesa, when Mayor Haganon was there, introduced his electric car. And, of course, lastly but not the least, starring is Iloilo City, as you can see in the picture. Iloilo has shown the meaning of road sharing and has put up the esplanade along the now clean Iloilo River. Members of the Bayanihan sa Daan team are here today, as acknowledged earlier, Mr. President, to show their support to the Senate and to your leadership, as you've done in your city, and to urge us to facilitate the passage of the sustainable transport bills filed by many of our colleagues. These men and women are truly thought leaders, but more than thinkers, they are also men and women of action. After all, thought without action is like a bow without an arrow, useless without the other. Mr. President, we need a revolution, a peaceful turnaround of the mind, armed only with the sword of reason, the firepower of the law, and the violence of an idea whose time has come. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator.